Hello, friends. I have a bit of a milestone that I wanted to celebrate with you today. But first, I wanted to tell you a little bit about a presentation that I went to by Anthony Sweat, who is a church history professor at BYU and also a well-known and well-loved LDS artist. And I really enjoyed his presentation. He's one of the few people that I've heard point out very clearly that the doctrine part of the original Doctrine and Covenants was Joseph Smith's Lectures on Faith, and that was removed in 1921. And he pointed out that today's Doctrine and Covenants would probably better be called the Book of Commandments or the Book of Covenants, which I think is spot on. And I think it's really important to know that too. And I really appreciated that he was not squeamish about acknowledging some of the changes that have been made to the scriptures. Another thing I really enjoyed about his presentation was that he noted that the Lord doesn't really seem to make a distinction between a revelation and a commandment and a covenant and a law. He sort of uses all those interchangeably. And that was pretty cool to hear Anthony Sweat talk about that. And his point seemed to be that we should be obeying the Lord's counsel no matter how he frames it or what form he puts it in. And to illustrate his point, he focused on section 42 of the Doctrine and Covenants, which is known as the law. And it even calls it that in the section heading today. And he isolates at least 17 commandments that can be found in section 42, which is pretty cool. And you might want to go through it yourself and see what you can find as far as counsel from the Lord and commandments or revelation that he gives there, because it's pretty interesting. He did take some liberties with verse 22, which I think is a really important verse, where it says, "Thou shalt love thy wife with all thy heart." He put in spouse, which is understandable, of course, since women should know that a woman should love her husband with all her heart, just as her husband should love his wife with all his heart. So, of course, it should go both ways. But the rough part is that he left out the second half of that verse, which says to cleave unto her and none else, which is about as clear a directive as you could possibly wish for if you're trying to understand the Lord's stance on polygamy. So that was a little disappointing, but I was able to give him a copy of my book after his presentation, and he very graciously accepted that and said that he would read it. So I'm super excited. I hope that he does, and I hope he finds it interesting, and maybe we can chat about it sometime. That would be awesome. And another thing that he pointed out about verse 22 is that your spouse is the only person that the Lord commands you to love with all your heart besides God himself. And that is very cool. I think that's profound and worth thinking about and studying. So the part of his presentation that I liked the most was this object lesson. And you've seen it before. It's not new, but it really hit me in a profound way. This is the image that he shared, and it's so good. This one is just particularly well done and extremely meaningful, in my opinion. So you look at this, and of course, the question is, which square is darker, square A or square B? And if you've seen anything like this before, you can guess that they're actually both the same color. They're exactly the same shade of gray, even though your eyes are absolutely telling you otherwise. They look like completely different shades of gray, but they are exactly the same. So you can pause the video and take a screenshot and bring it into Paint or whatever drawing program you have so that you can see for yourself that those are exactly the same color. So that was a fantastic reminder that no matter how much we think we know, and even if we've seen something with our own eyes and we feel sure, it's always a good idea to keep an open mind and see if we're just not understanding context or if we're missing some details. And we should always be ready to say, I was wrong on that, or I didn't have the context I thought I did for that. And what struck me about this particular object lesson was that the reason your eyes, in this particular example, the reason your eyes trick you into thinking that those squares are a different color is because of this object that you can see, this column, is standing in the way of the light. It's blocking some of the light. So the shadow that it's casting is the reason that your brain gets the colors wrong. And I realize this is just an illustration, but in this model, if you were to move that column out of the way and let the light shine on the whole grid, then you would be better able to tell what the colors really are. And I thought that this was just a great metaphor for anything that obscures truth in real life. So an obstacle could be traditions that don't allow us to see things as they really are because we're sort of caught up in our traditions. It could be obviously false narratives that are handed down that we don't re-examine to see if they're accurate. We just keep passing them along. It could be pride. Pride can be an obstacle that makes it hard for us to see clearly. So the point is that so many things can skew our perception and throw us off. And it's always good to be ready to see things differently because none of us are seeing things clearly. We see through a glass darkly, as Paul put it, and we only know in part in this life. So this is why I love section 123 of the Doctrine and Covenants. And a lot of you are familiar with this already. It's part of a letter that Joseph Smith wrote while he was in Liberty Jail. And one of the parts I love is when he says, "There are many yet on the earth who are only kept from the truth because they know not where to find it. Therefore, that we should waste and wear out our lives in bringing to light all the hidden things of darkness wherein we know them. Therefore, let us cheerfully do all things that lie in our power, and then may we stand still with the utmost assurance to see the salvation of God and for his arm to be revealed." I know so many of you are sharing this with friends and family and strangers. I know several of you went to share the information about Joseph Smith's monogamy with whoever you could and hand out pamphlets and have signs and t-shirts and all sorts of fun things. What a great thing. And I heard a lot of great stories from that and positive experiences that people had sharing that with passersby. So that was wonderful. And there are so many ways to share. My documentary is just one tool out of many. It was actually exactly a year ago today that I first published Woe Unto You, Scribes, The Hidden History of Polygamy. And between YouTube and Rumble, it's now got over 50,000 views. It was kind of a goal that I had formed a little while back that I was hoping it could get 50,000 views by its 1-year anniversary. And I realized that if you know anything about YouTube, you know that that doesn't mean that 50,000 people have literally watched it. Like some people watch just a little bit. But the good news is that it has been seen by many thousands of people. And I personally know that it's been seen by people in Australia, in England, Spain, Switzerland. I got to meet some people from Switzerland just a few weeks ago. They are stellar. That was such a pleasure to meet them. So anyway, this has been fantastic. And I just want to thank you so much for helping me reach that personal goal. And I thank you so much for sharing light and truth in all the ways that you're doing it. So keep on sharing. The truth is rolling forth and no puny arm can stop it. Thanks so much, and I will see you next time.